August 3rd, 2017. One of the real treats of this gallery is the work that comes in. One of the hardest things I have to do is remembering what Paul tells me about the history of each one of his paintings. Paul Garnett, marine artist, is here now. He has just brought this, look at this, from the yardarm on the Bounty, looking forward as the Bounty sights land in the distance. From the masthead, look, Mr. Christian, land. Foredeck watch, unbelievable. Paul, take over any painting.
All right, so let's go with the lightning here, which is the biggest one. This was a very, very famous clipper built in the equally famous yard of Donald McKay in East Boston. And she was a very, very fast ship, known for her speed. And this painting depicts her on her maiden voyage, brand spanking new. And she has a blown out topsail and a blown out jib that you can clearly see. The men are on deck tending the lines, hauling everything in so the rags can be pulled in. There are men running across the deck forward to assist, the captain yelling from the stern. And the most amazing thing is this fact. She recorded on this day 436 miles in one day under sail, just imagine that, and did it with a blown out topsail, a blown out jib, her rail in the water, and her rigging slack.
And this was from U.S. to London?
That was from U.S. over to London, and at this point she was off the coast of Ireland. And I thought it would be neat to do the painting at a different angle too, with the ship leaning towards you, which foreshortens the mast and gives you a very, very good look of the detail on the deck, which is not shown on a lot of marine
You're absolutely
paintings,
correct. You know, I looked at the perspective when I first saw it, and I said, I didn't quite understand it or realize why it was that, because you never see it like this.
See where you are here, Howard. See these? She had a very unique thing in her center deck from the mainmast forward.
Yeah, I see it, the opening.
And all those ships had an opening, but the men had to go down from the quarterdeck, across the deck, and up on the forecastle. This had two walkways right in here that went right over that opening. So if anything had to be handled quickly, the men could run all the way down the length of the deck, unimpeded by ladderways or anything, and get forward to handle this mess like what they're doing here.
So the first deck, the lower deck, is open all the way through.
It's all open, that's right.
I love the shadow effect coming through the foresails on the staysails.
She's heading, at the end of the day, heading west. The light is in the late afternoon in back of her. So the light would naturally be coming through the sails, causing all these dramatic shadows.
Unbelievable.
Not just the different shadows from the sails in back of the other ones, but also the stitching in the canvas, the places where the canvas is reinforced and doubled up.
Yeah, because you can see the shrouds and everything.
That's right.
On
the light does not pass through that. So all of this you have to keep in mind when you're painting is where the light is coming from. What's the wind doing, how fast the ship is going, and what type of sea that she's running in. Because even people, when they look at a painting like this, they don't need to have been sailors or to go to sea. If they see the ocean wrong, or the sails are going one way and the flag's another, there's something in the human brain that will tell them something's wrong with that. So I try to be very, very careful, and this is also reproduced from the ship's log. So what you're seeing here is the captain's words from that day put into paint.
So when you're researching a painting like that, you will go into every part of anything that is documenting the boat. And in this particular case, the captain's log. Captain's log talked about the sails blowing out. What point of sail, and you knew where they were and what they were doing.
That's right. There's no artist invention in this. You know, all I do is take what is written and what is recorded and research the actual places, the spot in the ocean, what the sky was like, what the weather was doing, and I put that into paint. But that is not anything that comes out of my mind. That is literally from the words of the men that were living it.
Unbelievable job, Paul. That is just fantastic.
Thank you.
August 3rd, Paul Garnett 2. We were just talking about the clippers rounding the horn, so I thought I'd bring up this piece. This is the Golden Hind in Magellan Passage?
And the Drake Passage.
Drake Passage, excuse me.
With Sir Francis Drake, when they were on their trip, he had 2 other ships with him. They were way behind, and they were going into the Pacific to raid the Spanish treasure fleets, and then later to go up the coast of current-day California looking for a Northwest Passage, which of course they did not find. So this is the Drake Strait, the Drake Passage rather, with this very, very confused, choppy sea, which is very well documented in Drake's writings that he left behind, that the sea was very steep, very angry, and very choppy. But the wind wasn't that bad, but the sea was churning up. Now, what most people don't know about that part of the world is the Pacific is 8 feet higher than the Atlantic. And there's nothing there at the bottom of the world to stop these 2 great oceans from slamming together. And then when the wind comes up, it makes it even worse. So it was a treacherous place, a graveyard of ships, and a lot of them did not make it around it. Bligh's Bounty was one of those where, when they, just before the mutiny on the Bounty, when they were going to Tahiti, he went around the horn and actually made it around, but got beaten back into it. Finally had to turn around and go by way of Cape of Good Hope off the tip of Africa. This is a very, very bad stretch of water with these islands and pieces of rock with nothing on them but birds that have been there for millions and millions of years.
Birds and guano.
Yeah, and a very, very treacherous, very, lonely place, and very, very famous for weather coming up on you like nothing and causing havoc. So
now, Paul, I remember in an earlier piece that we had of yours, the Golden Hind, you talked to me that you could really tell the dating on the boat. This was pre-painting the hull.
Yeah, if you look close, you can actually see the water marking on the dry planking. You can see the difference in color between here and right above the waves, where the waves were slapping against the side of the ship. It always looked wet. And this is another thing to capture with ships from this period, because other than the decorating on the whales and on all the fancy carving, nothing was painted. It was just the wood was bare with oil on it. So you got to be careful when you paint stuff like that it looks like it's being wet from the water, but what up above it is dried from the sun cooking the timbers all the time. So.
And the oil would help preserve it from water and rotting, and then...
Yeah, and it would also change, too. It would leave port looking nice, like it was sort of like a matte varnish on it. And then by the time they got back, it was black all over the place. It was just,
so what year was this passage?
This was 1727.
1727. And that is one confused sea.
Yep. The birds are coming out. Anytime they would see anything, birds haven't changed for a millennium.
Yeah. This will be our 3rd video with Paul Garnett. This piece is called The Slaver, Mediterranean, later part of the 18th century. Take it away, Paul.
Yeah, this painting has a British frigate chasing down an Algerian slaver, which was common in the Mediterranean at that time. They would take slaves to different ports and sell them for various reasons. At the time, British had a letter of marque sent out to the Royal Navy. If they encountered any vessels like that, they were either to take them or sink them and take the people on board that were enslaved and allow them to either join the Royal Navy or make their way back to them to England. If you look midships where Howard is right now, you can see the slaves all lined up, because what they would do when they were imminently in danger of being caught, they would bring their cargo, so-called, up on deck, and they would have them all chained together, and at which point they would try to force them over the side to an obvious doom, which would, release them from any sort of legal thing. If the British arrested them and put them in chains and brought them back to trial, there would be no cargo for them to be held accounted for. So what I wanted to do with this was just do a painting that was nice, something visually nice to look at, to something that was historical, that told a story, but also a very unhappy story from not too much of an off-putting standpoint. In other words, I didn't want to do a painting actually showing them forcing these people over the side or any of the other horrible things they used to do to them, but just what was imminently about to happen.
And you've captured it here in the chase and everything, because you can see the stern chasers on in the frigate, and then the last firing, they've got the range on the boat.
They're coming pretty close, and these guys are about ready to, go down for the count. So.
Yeah, I think these guys are a little
And I think they're close enough that they're not. These guys are not going to have enough time to put them over the side. And I would like to look at my painting as a happy ending for those people that were enslaved, and hopefully went on to something better, even if it was just a serving in the Royal Navy. So.
And the color of the Mediterranean waters is absolutely
everybody
beautiful.
has asked me about that, and that's a lovely, beautiful light cobalt blue. And you've got bad weather coming in as well.
Oh yeah, you can see the thunderheads and the cumulus clouds there.
Yeah.
That's coming up right behind them.
So, yeah.
Wonderful.
And the British has a couple of their stunsails there too on their foremast.
Yep.
Trying to get just a little more bite into the chase, and So that's the story of that guy.
Yeah. So we get on the fore topsail, and would that be
the royals are
royals?
furled. Yes. As the water's getting a little choppy and a little steep, and they would have taken the upper sails in, keeping most of the strain on the lower part of the mast. So
wonderful.
all little details we have to think about.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome. Unusual with that.
This is our last painting of the pieces that Paul has brought up. They'll be coming to the gallery sometime soon. This is the Bounty, HMS Bounty. And I just asked Paul a question. I says, Paul, how much time do you have in creating the painting? And then again, how much time do you have in researching the painting? And Paul, you can take it from there.
Okay, well, Howard, most of the time what I do is what's called narrative marine art, which is art that tells a story. And it's mostly based in the fact that ever since I've been painting, I've more or less ended up doing book covers for things about the 1812 War, about the War of Independence, the British Navy. So I tend to do things that actually took place in history. They make them a little more interesting than something that's just an artist's invention. But the hard work of it is getting into, hopefully with the specific story you're working on, getting into a ship's log, which is being written in the time the picture is taking place in. It's being written by the men that are living it, and there's nothing better that an artist can work from. Now this is HMAV Bounty, just miles from Pitcairn Island in the deep South Pacific.
And that's Pitcairn there in the distance.
Yes, that's Pitcairn. About 4 weeks after the mutiny took place. Now the thing with Pitcairn is that was discovered years before, but it was put on the British maps 173 miles out of position. So Christian found this accidentally, and when they saw it on the horizon, they thought it was either a cloud or some sort of a smudge in the atmosphere. It was only when they got closer that they figured it was land. Now, what you're looking at here is almost as if the viewer is in the main topsail,
right on the yard,
looking forward, standing on the yard.
Yeah.
And if you look at the man aloft, he's yelling down, "Look, Mr. Christian, land," which is going to be the title of the painting. And he's pointing at the island. If Howard would lower the camera down here to the deck, you can see the guy in the forward watch with his foot up on the cathead. And Christian always kept one man forward, one man midships, and one aft, because he was petrified of being found by a British ship. And there's another man just above the sail here, underneath the sail. He's running forward with the announcement from the mast. And you can see little things. They were in the South Pacific where it was extremely hot, and you can see a barrel here right next to the windlass, water feet, with water in it, with a cask that was kept open, Christian always had those posted in 3 different spots too, so the men had plenty of water to drink. So the whole idea was to give the viewer a feeling of actually being part of this discovery. And I thought it would be much better than showing just the ship at sea arriving at the island, that you would almost be part of that very moment when, out of discouragement and everything else, they didn't think they were going to find anything, and ultimately would have been caught by the British Empire. So
I was just looking at the light and that.
yeah, well, if the light is backlit, the sun is behind this cloud here, and it's causing the light to come through the canvas. And what happens with that, like with any cloth, where the canvas is doubled up or double stitched to reinforce certain parts, like where the reef points are here, this lower part here, which gets added on if they need extra canvas.
Is that like a bonnet on the bottom?
Yes, it's like a bonnet, but without the stitching. It's a thing that the sailmaker actually put on. And they had 2 permanent suits of sails like that. And what that's doing is it's showing the light coming through the canvas and highlighting all that beautiful pattern on the front of the sail.
Oh, excuse me, but is this one of your more recent paintings of the Bounty?
I just did this. It's I just finished it last week.
How many years have you been painting the Bounty?
I painted the Bounty from about, I'd say, 1980 on. Yeah, that's the bow wave being pushed out by the ship. She was very bluff-bowed, but Bligh described her as a magnificent sea boat. So we know from his log that she was a wonderful sailing vessel, very stiff and very fast in heavy seas, despite her bluff bow.
Now, you were on the replica of the HMS Bounty
I was on the replica
years?
of Bounty that was built for the 1962 film with Marlon Brando. That was one time in Hollywood where they did something for real, where they had a replica of the ship built at a proper shipbuilding firm up in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. And I spent 8 years as the ship's carpenter on her. So I know the Bounty like the back end of my hand.
8 years on board,
8 years,
and then painting her since 1980. So that's 36 years of painting the boat, and this is your most recent piece of the Bounty.
Well, most of the paintings were done not because they were Bounty, but we're putting together a book called The Mutiny on the Bounty, Art and Drama on the High Seas. And what it is, it's an art book. It's definitely an art book with all the paintings on, and when you open the book, the paintings will be to the left on one page, and the text about each individual painting will be on the right.
Oh, so wonderful. I can't wait.
So we're hoping to get that published pretty soon.
All right, Paul, thank you once again.
Welcome, Howard.
And Sandy Kwang, thank you for telling me how to delete my deleted storage.
Okay.
Bye now.